I'll ask Sheriff McAndrew to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome. The district attorney is phoning it in. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Is he?
I'm here, thank you.
Okay, all right, so we can proceed. I trust that everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes that were circulated prior to today's meeting. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading and approve the minutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes are approved from the January 2023 meeting. I find it hard to believe that I'm talking about 2023 again already. Does anybody from the public wish to address the board on agenda items? Only on agenda items. Okay, I see no one, and I take this opportunity to remind the public that we're limiting our public comments to 3 minutes each. So we'll go now for the first motion on the agenda is a motion to approve all current payables for the Community Corrections Center and the prison. Again, they've been circulated, and trust everybody's had an opportunity to review them. So based upon that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the current payables.
Motion.
Got a motion, Commissioner Dominic. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Shermack. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. The current payables are approved. Mr. DeBillio, are you ready for your report?
Yes.
Okay, we'll entertain with the controller's report.
Thank you. Thank you. I had it right here in front of me, and I'll get it there again. Hold on one quick second. Okay. Thank you. The Controller's Office reviewed the prison inmate and canteen account reconciliations, which were prepared by the Prison Business Office for the month of January of 2023, and found no discrepancies between the reconciliations and the bank statements. The balance in the inmate account was $494,328.32 as of January 31st of 2023. The balance in the canteen checking account was $353,048.68 as of January 31st. In addition, as of January 31st, 2023, the canteen account also included a balance in the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust investment accounts of $757,090.95, which will mature in July of 2023. And during the month of December 2022, $88,093.73 was paid from the canteen account for the benefit, welfare, and education of county inmates. And the itemized details are attached to my report. And lastly, we took a vote on auditing the canteen and inmate accounts, Your Honor, and Attorney Ruggiero and I are in the process of working on a scope for that audit and selecting an auditor. So we'll be having that taken care of right away. And Dave, we want you involved in that process also. Thank you. And that's all. That's it for my report.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve? Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? On the question, any questions for the controller? Okay, if not, all in favor of approving the controller's report?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The report is approved. Thank you, Mr. DeBillio. Mr. McConaughey, we'll have the Community Corrections Center report.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's the house arrest report for the month of January of '23. Programs totals, house arrest had 163 participants, juvenile had 22. Programs revenues, house arrest had $52,811.12, juvenile had $4,450. Totals for year-to-date end month, $57,261.12. Programs expenses was $91,315.54. Programs completions, we had 36. Violations, we had 7. We still have 1 outstanding warrant from house arrest. And budget overall, overtime's at 2%, expenses at 9%, and revenue was at 8%. That's the end of my report.
Are the juvenile numbers increasing?
Yeah, well, they did from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're up a little bit. They're up, they have 20, I think they have 21 bracelets they're using right now.
Okay. And how about juveniles detained? What?
I don't know. Somebody had mentioned that we're dealing with Ohio too. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. We're putting juveniles in Ohio, right? Correct? But the beds, they told me they're not too bad. You know, he has no complaints. He says, in fact, he's going to be releasing some people off
Okay,
the
'cause
bracelet too, because the bracelets are getting a little tight right now.
we were transporting down to, I believe, Northampton County?
Northampton, I think that was a personnel thing, so I think we're at like 2, maybe 4 beds at the most.
Okay, all right. And we are transferring people to transporting?
As we speak, there's one handing out to Northampton.
Okay, but Ohio?
Ohio in some cases, yes, that's,
Yeah.
that's the last resort, but we have transported out to Ohio.
Why Ohio? Just capacity? There's no capacity? Facilities?
Lack of facilities.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
many. There are not many juvenile centers, detention centers in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. McConaughey? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve his report. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. On the question? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Your report is approved. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Warden?
Good afternoon, Board. The average daily population for January was 729 inmates, 541 were county inmates, and we averaged 637 adult males, 5 juvenile males, and 86 adult females for January. The average daily population of U.S. Marshal detainees was 188. The overtime and out-of-county boarding reports are attached. Our staffing update, currently our correctional officer numbers break down to 173 full-time officers, 7 who are out on workers' comp, nobody out on continuous FMLA, but 64 with intermittent FMLA, and we have 1 on administrative leave. We have 0 vacancies in that we started a new class of today. It's a total of 181 full-time officers. As of January 31st, revenue was at 22% and expenses were at 6%. Extraordinary occurrence reports, there were 5 in the month of January. On January 5th, an inmate was being non-compliant with the booking process. He stated he was hearing and seeing things and he became aggressive. The inmate was then secured in the emergency restraint chair and nursing staff conducted a medical assessment and checked the restraints after we put him in the ERC. On January 8th, a code blue was called for a fight in our Bravo housing unit. That's the housing unit for the female inmates. After unsuccessful verbal commands to cease fighting, OC sprayed was deployed to gain compliance, and this caused the inmates to disengage and allowed staff to secure each inmate, and both inmates were then decontaminated. And on January 10th, Lackawanna County Sheriff's deputies reported to the prison that they were coming to the prison to commit an uncooperative female. And upon arrival, the inmate was acting unruly and not following any directives given to her. She continued belligerent actions towards staff and the medical department. Due to her not following any directives and her aggressive behavior, she was placed in the emergency restraint chair for her safety, as well as the safety of the staff. On January 25th, a female inmate who was on suicide prevention watch was continuously covering the camera in her cell. Staff placed her in the emergency restraint chair for her safety. And on January 26th, an inmate refused to comply with orders to change his cell, and staff had to assemble an extraction team. This individual was removed from his cell and placed in the emergency restraint chair, moved to a new housing unit, and was then removed from the emergency restraint chair. PREA, there were 4 PREA investigations completed in the month of January. 2 were inmate sexual harassment allegations, and both of them were deemed unfounded. And 2 were staff on inmate sexual harassment. 1 was deemed unfounded and 1 was deemed founded. All completed investigations have been forwarded to the district attorney's office for further action if deemed appropriate. Personnel vacancies, we have a vacant position for deputy warden of treatment, a substance abuse mental health supervisor, a licensed mental health clinician, and a substance abuse mental health specialist. Anyone who may be interested is advised to go to the county's website to find the job description and to complete an application. And this concludes my report.
Warden, I did talk to HR. They're going to expand the advertising of those positions to like Indeed.com or Monster.com or whatever the search engines are that are the most effective.
Right, that's great.
So
Thank you.
they are going to do that. Do you have enough applicants for the deputy warden of treatment, or do you want that advertised as well? If we're going to do all of them, do you want me to just tell them to add up?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. And then the FMLAs up to 6, is that an increase from last month? We're up to
You know,
64?
I think it's an increase of 1 or 2. I'm not really sure, but we unfortunately are always running in that 60 number, right in that neighborhood.
And did you get I think I forwarded the memo from Matt Carmody about the FMLA process and trying to control the amount of people we have on intermittent FMLA and making sure that it's not abused. Did you get a copy of that?
I may have, and it probably what spurred me, I'm having weekly meetings with my staff.
Okay.
To go over sick use, FMLA use, and things like that.
I'll have my assistant Ellen send it to you just in case.
Okay.
If you're like me, you probably have 1,000 emails. So I'll have her forward it to you. And he just talked about, steps that can be taken just to monitor and ensure that particularly the intermittent FMLA is not abused.
Right.
So I'll send that to you.
I think I remember getting that. We were all on
I think I CC'd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to you anyway.
Okay.
Any other questions for the warden?
Yes, I do. Warden, the mandated double shift situation, is that about the same as it's been? Oh, thank you, Judge.
The mandated,
Double shift situation, is that about the same as it has been?
yeah, even though I just mentioned that we're now fully staffed, we have 6 individuals who are in training right now, and that's going to take 4 weeks. That's number 1. Number 2 is we have 7 individuals, which is an uncommonly high number, who are out on workers' comp. So even though it sounds like, it looks like on paper that we're fully staffed, we're really 12 short right now. 7 because of workers' comp, 5 are brand new and just starting their training now. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of relief when they come off of training in 4 weeks. And hopefully in that time, some of the folks that are on workers' comp will be able to come back to work.
Good, good. We'd love to see that happen.
Right.
How many are in training now?
6. Yeah.
And were you able to give any members of Stand Up NEPA a tour of the prison that we talked about?
Last month, on the same day that we had the prison board meeting, whichever date that was, there was a small group of individuals who toured the prison.
Oh, okay.
4 or 5 individuals. I didn't do the tour because of the prison board meeting.
Okay.
But they had a lengthy tour. I thought it was going to be about a half an hour, but I think they were there for 2 hours plus.
Oh, good. Okay, good to hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I've been meaning to ask you? Remember you told me that with intermittent FMLA, sometimes the employees will show up for their shift, but then use intermittent FMLA for the mandatory overtime, which would be, they're back to back, right?
Yes.
So what is the basis for that? Is that usually physical injuries or like a mental health injuries? I'm just, the reason why I'm confused is because for a physical injury, if you have like, say, a low back injury, okay, so maybe you can be on your feet for 8 hours, but you can't be on your feet for 16 hours. But for a mental health injury, I think it's a little trickier there because if you have anxiety, why would that prevent you from working the next 8 hours if you can work the first 8 hours? That might be something you want to
Right.
dive into.
I wish I had an answer for you.
Yeah, and-
Honestly, I don't even get the reason why a person is on intermittent FMLA. It's strictly human resources. They don't
Yeah.
share that information
But
with
that
me.
might be something, remember you and I talked and you said that you have, is it Amanda working on the, okay, that might be something that she wants to look at. It makes more sense, I think, from a physical injury perspective because, you know what I mean?
think step one is we'll reach out to human resources to make sure we're not doing anything we shouldn't do from that
No,
perspective.
that's,
if they
I
could
mean,
share
that goes into the pattern looking, like looking into the patterns. And again, because if you have a back injury, I could see arguably you can't stand, but if you have anxiety, I mean, it's a little harder to prove that you can't do a mandatory if you just did, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
So it's something that I've been meaning to talk to HR about, but I always forget. So maybe talk to Joanne or Amanda and then have your woman at the prison maybe look into that.
We will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the warden's report.
So moved.
A second?
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You said you had some personnel issues that you wanted to discuss,
Yes, because of the nature of the personnel issues,
executive session.
if deemed appropriate by the board, yes.
All right. Well, I think it would be, let's see what we have from the public first, and then,
Thank you.
so stick around. Anybody from the public wish to address the board?
Judge.
Yo.
Hello. Bev DeBarros from Quincy Avenue in Scranton. So with, I think, some good news. Last night I went to city council. You know, I've been very disappointed, discouraged that we haven't had, to my knowledge, we haven't had any voter registration within Lackawanna County Prison. So I went to city council to tell them about our voter suppression because even though it's a county jail, it's located in the city, I'm a resident in the city, I feel responsible for these people in there to the extent that we can make sure that everything is up by the law. So I presented this situation as I often do here. I said that I'd reached out to the League of Women Voters, hoping they would help. No response there. I suggested maybe the Justice Department from either Marywood or the University of Scranton could help move this along. But it was just me speaking. I didn't get response from City Council. Hopefully they're thinking it over. But anyway, I get home, and in my email from Stephanie Bressler is an attachment to this called Ballots for All, holding Pennsylvania county jails accountable for providing ballot access. It's an 18-page report by Common Cause about our state. I just got it from Denise because I can't print or even open Adobe. So somebody on her lunch hour printed it and handed it to me downstairs. But I see in the introduction that it says jails are required by law to provide registration and voting opportunities to all eligible voters. Currently, Pennsylvania county jails, of course, do not have universal process for voter registration. page 3. Our research found that out of the 25,000 people in county jails in Pennsylvania, only 52 people, not percentage, people, requested mail ballots in the 2020 general election using an address associated with one of the 18 county jails. So that's not even all. Through the pages, they have examples of counties who do it very well and how they proceed. It gives detailed procedures and suggestions, and I mean, this is not a hard thing to do. I suggest that we start immediately and get our people registered. I mean, we know in May how many of you are up for election, you know? Come on. That's that. Oh, I only have this copy. So afterward, would somebody allow in their office a copy for each one of the board members? I would appreciate that.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be great. And Bev, you may recall, wasn't all that long ago that Dr. Bressler wanted to come in, and she was invited in, but it never happened. She didn't follow up on
Right
it.
before COVID.
I understand that, but, you know, you opened up by talking about voter suppression. We're not in the business
have
of
opened-
suppressing votes. If you want to come in and register people, you know, you talk to the warden, and they'll set it up.
Is that a promise?
Do you want to put me under oath? I mean,
Take it.
I mean, it's, yeah.
Stephanie has the materials.
Well,
She-
you know, and as I said, she was invited in, and
Yeah, at that time she was.
Yeah.
She really, by personal decision, she doesn't really go out in public very much because of,
well, whatever the reason, I mean, she was invited in. She wasn't,
she would give me and us, whoever, other volunteers, she would give us the materials.
as long as you and
Would get in.
as long as you and your volunteers are, you know, deemed to okay to come into the prison, whatever security background they have to do.
The ones I would ask.
You've been in there before, sure. So I don't see a problem. Do it sooner than later, because now, I mean, I think yesterday was the day to start circulating petitions. So you don't even have a ballot yet, because you don't know who's going to be on the ballot yet. But this is the time to start and get it organized. And
They need to register where they live. This is a complicated thing, and not everybody.
well, not everybody out there is a resident of Lackawanna County either. Okay, so just talk to the warden.
And if it makes it easier, I just found that document and sent it to everybody, so we don't need to make
Okay,
it
so
that
we have it. So you're good. You get to keep your oath. Okay? All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Joan?
Joan Hodawan at Scranton. I have to echo her proposal. I think, you know, this would be a great thing. You know, a few years ago when I started coming to the prison board, the first issue that came up was revitalizing the GED program, which we were able to do. And that allows inmates to get basic job skills and life skills so that they have an opportunity to get into the workforce when they're released. By getting them to register to vote and voting and participating in elections and being a part of the community, this makes them have skin in the game, so to speak. So I think, you know, I don't think I know, you know, it may be a bit of paperwork and discussions and working out the details, but I don't see a downside to this. Okay, obviously not every inmate will want to vote or register. Maybe not all of them are eligible to vote. I don't know their past histories. But for those who are eligible and we can do this, you know, I understand, you know, that when you're incarcerated, part of it is, you know, a punishment. but the ultimate objective should be to return somebody to society that's a productive member of society, wants to participate in society, and be a positive member of society. And so I think this can only be to the positive. It may take, some time to get it rolling and to work out the bugs, but I don't see a downside to it.
I don't think anybody here disagrees with you. Anybody else from the public? Thank you, Joan.
Hello, my name is Maggie Craig. I'm from Scranton. I became concerned with what's happening at the Lackawanna County Prison back in June when I went to Nayog Park to sign a petition to put a referendum on the ballot in November to end solitary confinement in the prison. And before I go further, I just want to give you the definition I was given that day of solitary confinement, and it's exactly as it was written in the article. Solitary confinement shall mean the confinement of a detainee or inmate in a cell or other living space for more than 20 hours a day by themselves or with other inmates. So the important thing here is that there's at least 4 hours out of cell time. So as we know, in the restrictive housing unit in the prison, there's 1 hour out of cell time. And so we can say solitary confinement, we could say restrictive housing, but the definition fits either way. That day in the park, I honestly brought up some similar concerns, as you all have. What about issues of safety, for example? And they said to me, here in the referendum, there's an exception written if someone poses a danger to themselves or to others. There's also an exception written into the article in the case that someone wants to be put into solitary confinement for a period of time. And that day in the park, they explained to me what the restrictive housing unit was like, that someone could get put in a cell by themselves for 2 weeks or more for saying something disrespectful to a guard, for having a mental health emergency and peeing their pants, and that while they're in the restrictive housing unit, they would have no access to books or music, wouldn't get to talk to their family, get 1 hour out of cell time in a cage outside, barely big enough to walk around in circles in. I went on the prison tour last month, and I appreciate the time given to us and that you made the effort to give us the tour. But I have to say my concerns weren't assuaged. That it's shocking to me that people get put into the restrictive housing unit in the prison for days, never mind weeks. And so those signatures that were collected, I decided that day to help. I got about 50, not nearly as many as most other people. But most of the people I spoke to were pretty much on board in agreement that something needs to change. And so when the group got 13,000 signatures, I wasn't that surprised. I mean, 13,000 registered voters. That's about the population of Dunmore. It's the population of Clark Summit and Carbondale combined. It's twice the population of Dixon City. And so I was kind of excited that the voters of Lackawanna County would get a chance at the ballot box in November to have a say in how their county prison was run. But it didn't work out that way. And that whether or not that was the right call is an argument for a different time and place. But Frank Ruggiero, the county solicitor, said, no, the ballot box isn't the place where this matter needs to be decided. Where it needs to be decided is at the prison board meetings. And that's what's brought me here today and in the past month. And so we've been talking about mental health issues. We've been talking about different ways to address them. And we know that putting people into restrictive housing can increase mental health problems. And I guess my question for you today is if 13,000 of your constituents are saying we want something to change, and you've now had 6 months to consider what a fair response may be, where are you at with that? And Commissioner Notarianni, I would like to hear from you what your thoughts are at this point, if there's any progress to be made.
According to the solicitor, it's still something that's in the middle of litigation. So we really can't comment on it. But that being said, not to cop out of this, if you talk to the people that run the prison, they have a different outlook on it, an attitude towards it. There's a specific reason for restrictive housing. I understand, like, they'd all like to run things the way they'd like to run them,
Yeah.
but they're not there every day as Warden Betty is. It's a complex situation and job, and we're working on it. We're talking about it, and we'll see what we can do about it. But it's still in litigation. You've got to let the people that run the prison run the prison. The public, it sounds great, but is it feasible? Is it realistic? That's it.
Can the prison board change the rules of how the restrictive housing unit is run and who gets put into the restrictive housing unit? Like, do they have the ability to do that?
I actually don't know. Do we, Judge?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The part that's under litigation, Judge, that's regarding the referendum, correct?
It's regarding the referendum, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that the warden and the prison board and the commissioners can change inner policy within the prison. So maybe it would be wise for us to have a meeting similar to like an executive session to discuss it and see what we can do to remedy the issue. Is it
Or
my
if in fact
understanding
there is an issue.
If there is an issue, yeah.
Yeah, that's
But-
your opinion. That doesn't make it fact.
Right. Are you seeking to reduce it by 4 hours or something? Wasn't
To get at least 4 hours out of cell time
out of
instead
cell
of
time?
1 hour out of cell time.
That's all you're asking for? Or are you also asking for the?
Today, yeah.
Or are you also asking for the factors going into whether or not somebody's put into solitary confinement be reconsidered?
Now, I would like everything to be reconsidered and reevaluated. And yeah, I'm giving you my opinion today.
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay.
But I do think there's room here to reevaluate and bring in maybe other expert opinions. Something that came up on the prison tour that really stuck with me was that, there's room for desensitization for people, and this is coming from someone who gave us the tour, that being in a prison day in and day out for years might change your view of what needs to happen. That would be different than like even you would think is what's proper or not.
I don't
And
disagree.
so I think, with so many people saying something has to change, there has to be room somewhere even for small incremental improvements.
Well, Maggie, let me say this to you, that what your concerns are not going, they're not being ignored, okay? You've been here, as you say, several times, and so we're not ignoring them, and we're talking about them, but there are a lot of factors that go into running a prison on a daily basis, and we as a board under the statute make overall policy, okay? But the statute also vests the day-to-day running in the prison in the warden, okay? Now, obviously, if we come up with a policy that we can agree on, the warden has to follow that. But knowing where you're coming from helps us in our discussions. And they're not falling on deaf ears, I guess is what I can tell you.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think the warden knows that, as a board, we don't want any more solitary confinement than is absolutely necessary. And we've discussed that with the warden. He's not looking to have people in solitary any more than they absolutely need to be. And how much they need to be, he's the person that would know, who
But your
needs to be in
statement that it
solitary.
desensitizes people, I mean, that gets, that's logical and that makes sense, and that could conceivably happen, yes.
we're not in favor of it at all. And, we would want as much as only is necessary.
Yeah, well, and I think a clear policy also helps everyone be on the same page, COs, warden, public as well.
Thank you.
I think I asked, not the last meeting because I wasn't here, the one when we had it at the prison. I think I asked Colleen Orzel to give me a list of factors, if you can, well, the whole board. Like, is there like a list of factors that if they fall into this category, they end up in, like, do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm just not saying it well.
Can you
Okay,
come
can you
up,
come up for a
Colleen,
minute?
please?
Can you maybe just generally, I don't expect you to cover every single situation because I'm sure everything is fact-oriented, but just maybe provide the board with the general list of, inmate fighting or
Sure.
blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So that
I'm not
we
directly
know.
involved. I'm not directly involved in selecting
I don't know
housing
if I
for
asked
inmates.
you or if I asked Mr. Pica or if I asked the
I'm not
warden,
sure.
but if
That's
somebody
more of a
could do
Security
it.
and Classification Committee. But, so the several reasons for restrictive housing would be behavior, severity of, I think that they call it a propensity for violence. But majority of the time it's behavioral, it's a result of misconduct, and we generally restrict the inmates going to restrictive housing based on their propensity for violence. So if they're going to harm themselves or somebody else, those are the individuals that are going to spend more time in restrictive housing.
But I do
Sometimes-
think mental health has to be taken into
Yeah, sometimes like one of our housing, one of the blocks is more focused on mental health, and that's where there's a couple employees with WellPath that are really good at working with our individuals struggling with mental health issues. So they spend a lot of time on that unit, and they're in camera cells. So our administration and our staff do spend a lot of time thinking about the individuals in restrictive housing and what we can do to help them and benefit them, because we know that sitting behind that door for a certain amount of time can make them decompensate more. So with getting them out, going to recreation or spending their out of cell time, we do try to focus on minimizing their alone time in the unit or in their block or in their cell rather. But we can't do too much, and I'm not security, so I can't really speak too much on it. But we try to restrict we try to restrict who goes to restrictive housing to the most that need to be there.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question, sorry.
Well, maybe if you can have whoever
Yeah.
would know that information, just maybe if there's a generic list
Yeah.
of
Like
conduct.
you mean the charges that somebody might get for, like, due to misconduct hearing?
Yeah, like, for example, if somebody, like Maggie indicated, if somebody insults a
Yeah,
CO
we try to utilize
versus,
informal,
yeah,
like
just,
sanctions, where,
Yeah.
if you're talking back to a CO, you're not gonna get thrown into the hole, like we call it. So they might get like, their commissary restricted, like they won't be able to order commissary for a week, or they might get their phone restricted for a couple of days. So they don't necessarily go to the restrictive housing unit because they talk back at a CO.
right. So I think she wants to increase the 1 to 4 hours of outside cell time, but I think the other issue that has been raised is if people are being punished for their behavior when their behavior is driven by a mental health issue.
Right.
So I thought maybe if you gave us some insight, anyone at the prison, it might help us as a board make a decision.
Why don't we look into a more global review of policy, the disciplinary procedures, and whether there's, a stepped-up basis based on violations, what kind of discipline is imposed, along with the physical characteristics of the facility and safety concerns, some of which we can't talk about publicly. And then at some point, maybe we could put it all together and
makes sense.
review the policies in an active policy.
Because someone with mental health issues may act out aggressively, but it's,
Yeah, we could do things like have an evaluation procedure when discipline happens, what physical restraints are being done, when it's reviewed, and by who. I think to try to,
you just gave
off
yourself
the
more
top of
work.
our head. I know I did. I struggled with offering it, but I think we should, they can give us the materials, the rules and procedures, and we could look at it all, make sure that we're up to best practices and compliance with all the laws, and see what we can do to address the concerns that Ms. Craig raised.
Makes a lot of sense.
I just want to
Great
add as
idea.
well, if I could. the individuals that conduct the misconduct due process hearings for the inmates, after they have their hearing with the inmate and get their side of the story of what happened, just like anybody would get in their due process rights. Just even this morning, I was talking to the female that conducts the hearings, and those needs are identified. So if we see that somebody's acting out or a behavior as a result of their mental health, we immediately refer them to Leah Pardusky or somebody else from WellPath, who are the mental health professionals. So, and the immediate response I got from her was she's already seeing the individual. So it kind of goes hand in hand. You know, as soon as we find out that there might be something going on with somebody, we do make that referral.
Yeah, I think it's just a good opportunity for the board to be educated on what goes on and how that plays out
Good?
Thank you, Colleen.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to address the board?
Hi, I'm Liz Parsons. I just wanted to say in regards to the policy for the disciplinary, there is an extensive policy that names, that is the prison's policy that names all specific types of infractions. And what Maggie had mentioned is included. It goes all the way down to hoarding the newspaper, so can result in solitary confinement per the policy. Now, whether that policy is applied, I can't speak to the day-to-day practices, but you know, that would be a really great way to clear up some maybe misunderstandings between what the actual use is and the public's understanding. In regards to, I just wanted to add to one thing to what Maggie had said in regards to the tour. I was also present on the tour. Something that we're asking for, and it's not just out of cell time, it's adequate out of cell time. So, you know, as it stands right now, folks in any of the restricted housing units outside of, I believe, Charlie Block, the only out of cell time they get is outside. And so they're in the segregated cage outside. This time of year, I don't want to be outside for 4 hours. So even if 4 hours or 2 hours is offered, being outside in January is not like adequate, you know, out of cell time. You're still in isolation and the conditions just aren't, you know, great for folks. Some other things we wanted to mention, and this may be, you know, I understand the warden is running the entire prison, so maybe some minor details are handled by other folks, but we had been talking about tablets here and the accessibility to books. I know you were all looking into it and researching it and working with the library, and we were told that now the warden was looking for the programming, which would offer the books on the tablets, which we were told were free. We have learned on the tour that the first hour of tablet use is free, and anything beyond that, they're charged about 2 to 5 cents per minute. So that would include for any movies or books, educational books, self-help books, which I think we've all agreed upon should be accessible no matter what housing unit you're kept in the prison. So I just wanted to, you know, share that information in case it was lost in the communication that we are still, you know, the public pushing for folks to have free accessibility to books at all times throughout the day. And we still feel that the books being on the tablets offers some inaccessibility. We're still told that there are not enough tablets per prisoner. And so I don't know if that's because, you know, tablets break. I'm sure there's hundreds of tablets. They break, they're out of commission, but folks are not able to get these endless amounts, you know, throughout the day. And then another thing that really stood out to us on our tour is the quality of food. I know it's come up before when you all went back to meeting at the prison. You mentioned having eaten lunch there and that it was adequate. From what I saw, it was not adequate food. The group of 5 agreed that it was not adequate. Something that really stood out to us as well is the fresh food program, where folks are charged like $14 or more for a cheeseburger. You know, to me, as just a human being who wants to consume, I guess, as healthy as I can with the offerings in the world and within my price range, the fact that we're upselling fresh food to folks. Fresh food should be a right, not a privilege. People are only making a few dollars a day at their jobs there. The cost of prison for a family, not only are you losing the income of the person who's become incarcerated, you're paying to talk to them through emails and phone and traveling for visits. And so the cost of prison is expensive for regular folks. Take even somebody having or have not committed a crime against our community. Their families may have not, and they're still suffering. And so regardless, people can't afford the fish favorites. And so when I went home, I looked on some Lackawanna County information, and it does look like the prison shares a profit revenue with Airmark, who distributes the fresh food program. And that to me is disturbing, that we're turning a profit on offering people fresh food, which should be a right every day, 3 meals a day. So I felt I wanted to mention that as feedback from our tour. And I believe that's all I really have to say about it.
GTL is supposed to have one-to-one, Warden. You don't have to come back up. And they're supposed to have so many tablets on standby in case they break. So if that's not the case.
It is, we have enough. Right
Okay.
now, we have 731 tablets.
Okay, so you guys can't hear her, but she said we have enough. They have 731 tablets.
And by March, because I'm working with GTL right now, we're getting more tablets, and each inmate is going to be assigned a specific tablet, so they will have it just for them and nobody else.
Okay, and she said by March,
They have 3 hours free time a day.
they're getting additional tablets, so each inmate will be assigned a tablet. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Okay. If not, I'll ask you all to clear the room, please, so we can have an executive session. Where do you have to be at 2 o'clock? Ready? Okay. We're back in session. We went off into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, and so now we're back. So the presentation was about hiring a part-time employee at the prison as a receptionist, okay, by the name of Catherine Egan, and the warden has recommended that we hire her. She would be 12-hour shift once a week. Okay. She sits in the bubble? Yeah. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion? Motion. Do I have a second? On the question? All in favor? Aye. Mr. Powell? I agree. Okay, thank you. So the ayes have it. Ms. Egan, do what you need to do. Okay. Any members have any other business?
I just want to quickly just give the board an update. I was waiting until I got the final information. I prefaced this information on, we're not trying to burden the inmates with any type of costs or anything. I'm well aware that they're inmates and they have limited funds. However, the prison is the largest part of our budget, so we have to, at the same time, generate revenue. So the board may recall that I had talked to GTL, was that the beginning of last year, Tim?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, and renegotiated the contract with them, and the difference between 2022 and 2021 was an additional $358,031.72. That's an increase between 2021 and 2022. So almost $360,000 that we generated in revenue. And in 2024, starting in 2024, we will be receiving a percentage. We get a flat rate for the tablets, but because they didn't want to basically set precedent for other prisons to then want the same. So what they did to satisfy me, more or less, was to do the increments or the percentages. So we'll get in year 2, we'll get the difference between I don't know if it's 20% and 22% or whatever. But the revenue department indicated to me that assuming that the assuming that the numbers stay consistent with what the numbers were in 2022, that can be a good lump sum of upward of $1 million or more generated for the prison, in addition to any increased revenues that we get through the tablet and phone use. So I just wanted, that's good news, and I just wanted to update everybody on that.
All right, so that money goes to the county, right? Not to the prison? The GTL?
It goes to the general fund.
Right,
yes.
okay. Okay, anybody else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
On the question, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, people.